So I want to thank everybody for joining. I would say, thank you for joining our Tech Talks Live this morning. A couple of things that we ask folks, if you're going to ask questions, please use the chat function. If you have a question and you want to ask it in person, raise your hand. Your unmute for the microphone and camera, and obviously change your view at the bottom there. So hopefully those are helpful hints and tools. Big thank you for our sponsor, BigLeaf Networks, and John Coyle. John, if you want to take a moment and say hello.
Sure. Hello. Thank you. Yeah, so I am the channel manager for the Northeast for BigLeaf Networks, supporting the corporate data voice team and everything they do. So obviously anywhere their customers go, we go, and supporting them and their great team. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. All right. Thanks. So we're going to keep this on task here. So, our agenda, we're going to do a quick intro of CDVS in case people don't know who we are. John will present for a period of time, probably finish around 10 of the hour. There are Q&As and raffle time from 11:50 to 12 p.m. and then get people on their day. A couple of housekeeping items. Christy will be muting all attendees. At that point, presenters must unmute themselves to be heard. We are recording this session and we'll be forwarding the link out probably in the next week or so. Each attendee that is present at the end will receive a Grubhub or Uber Eats gift card brought to you by BigLeaf. Names will be drawn at the end for two $50 e-gift cards. You must be present to win, and you only can win once. Please ask questions in the chat window. Each qualifying question receives an additional chance to win a raffle prize. For people that don't know who CDVS is, our focus is on the customer and what's important to them. We definitely take a consultative approach to help customers improve their communications, whether that's internally or externally. We act as an extension of the customer's team. We assist with project management and implementation. We're an ongoing resource for our customers. We take a high touch, of course, no touching right now approach. Extremely high customer retention rate, passionate about what we do, and last but not least, we work in an honest and integrity and accountability. Those are three items that are very important to doing business with us. We do want to be not only we want to be a partner, not just a vendor, in the true sense, right? It's a partnership. It needs to be fair and equitable for both parties. So that's another way we do business. It's ingrained in our approach. And again, thank you for attending today. A little joke at the end here. Compliments of Kelly. Thought that was pretty cute, so we left that in the presentation. So, but going to keep this moving ahead. So, John, going to turn this over to you here. Let me stop sharing.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Let me share my screen. All right. How are we doing there?
Looks good.
Looks good.
All right. All right. So, yeah. So thanks for having me. We'll spend. So my thought was we would spend a little time kind of reviewing the overall market and kind of where SD-WAN maybe came from, where it's going, some of the solutions that are out there, and some of the problems that we're trying to solve. Just to kind of level set it for everyone, because I think SD-WAN is one of those terms that it's like saying cloud. It can mean a lot of different things. There's many different players out there offering different solutions. So I think it's fair to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about, and then we can spend a little time talking specifically about some of the problems that BigLeaf is able to address and solve. And then obviously we'll leave time for some questions. So let me get back on the screen. So yeah, so basically our corporate goal, as a company, is to ensure reliable and uninterrupted business communications and applications performance over the internet. So basically, our goal as a company, and some of the things we'll talk about, is to just make sure that companies who are accessing resources in the cloud over internet circuits are able to do so in an uninterrupted fashion, and make sure that the critical applications are prioritized over all of your non-critical applications. So that's really the goal of BigLeaf. So how did we get there? I guess our focus is absolutely on cloud applications, which obviously can mean a lot of different things, but I think we can probably all agree that cloud applications and SaaS usage is exploding. This is actually a survey from Blissfully, who tracks SaaS usage. This was from the 2019 report. The 2020 report is due out actually this summer. But I think we can probably all agree that companies of any size, SaaS usage and cloud usage has exploded over the last 4 to 5 years. I think these numbers probably hockey stick maybe a little more in 2020 after what's been going on. I think companies that, I've dealt certainly with companies who have little to no SaaS or cloud usage, who are now absolutely looking at it for some business continuity and to be able to support some work from home usage and things like that. So I think, if anything, these probably go up even higher in the next year. So, and it seems to track across really of companies of any size, whether it's small to medium, whether it's enterprise customers. So I don't think, probably not telling anyone anything here that they don't know, but I think SaaS and cloud are here to stay, and if anything, are going to grow probably even more rapidly this year.
Hey,
yes.
Joe, quick question. We have a question.
Yeah.
How long has BigLeaf been around, and how did they get started?
Sure.
If you don't have that in your presentation, if you want to answer that
now. No, that's a good question. I was going to hop to that later, but that's a good question. BigLeaf's been around since 2014. Started really shipping product and servicing customers in 2015. At that point, SD-WAN was actually not a term. We were doing SD-WAN before SD-WAN was a term. So we were one of the pioneers in this space. We're actually based out of Portland, Oregon. We are venture backed. We've probably doubled in size in the last year. So have seen a real uptick in adoption and usage over the last, several years, but definitely over the last year with this, I think it correlates to this explosion in SaaS and excuse me, cloud usage. The adoption of BigLeaf kind of mirrors this because of our focus on cloud applications. So yeah, so we've been around for I guess probably 5 years in this space, solid 5 years, and have seen this market explode and kind of have been leaders in some of this, especially the cloud focus. Cloud usage, I picked from that same report. They kind of broke it down obviously by company size, so I just picked 50 to 100 because I think that kind of mirrors what a lot of companies, maybe not everyone on this call, but it's a typical small business, but these numbers were very similar for all company types. Obviously, just the scale's a little different, but the typical 100 user company, in this case, a 71 employee company, is spending $150,000 a year on SaaS. So that's kind of their all-in spend, coming out to about $2,000 per employee. So there's a decent amount being spent on SaaS and cloud applications. So what we are trying to do, especially, is protect that investment, make sure those applications are accessible at all times, that they perform well. But all this cloud usage definitely creates some challenges, right? I think, as we see here, 584 people to app connections. So 71 employees using 79 different applications and any kind of combination of that. So being able to create network policies and QoS policies that address all of that becomes very difficult because it's constantly changing. There's so many different connections. There's so many different applications to keep track of that any sort of statically assigned policies really are outdated probably 5 minutes later. And these apps are constantly turning over. 44% of the applications turn over within probably 18 months to 2 years, I think was the actual number. So whatever's in place today might not be in place a year from now. So that just creates more complexity with this kind of ever-changing application usage. So it's difficult for IT to keep a handle on all of this, especially when we add in that there's 12 unique billing owners. So meaning anyone with a laptop and a credit card can sign up for a new cloud application. And many times IT is not finding out about this. So maybe somebody in accounting just signed up for QuickBooks Online. They don't tell their IT department or their managed service provider or whoever's handling IT about this. So it's tough to create a policy that protects that traffic when we don't know that that traffic exists. So cloud usage is definitely creates some opportunities for companies, but it also creates some challenges. So that's hopefully where BigLeaf comes in. This is kind of where we're headed as far as some of the networking challenges that are obviously introduced with cloud. So the other big challenge with cloud is the way we're accessing the cloud from our corporate location to those cloud resources is over the internet, right? So ISP circuits can be unpredictable at times, right? They could be packet loss and latency and jitter and outages, throughput issues, all those issues that we experience with ISP circuits. So really the goal of the SD-WAN provider is to minimize those and be able to protect the customer's traffic and really that accessibility of those cloud resources. So how is that done? This is kind of where the SD-WAN market evolved from, right? So it was trying to take from a traditional networking approach to this cloud-first networking, which is kind of where we are right now. The same benefits and needs that we had with a traditional network, like an MPLS network, with maybe just a single internet circuit for email and web browsing, has now changed, right? That is not necessarily the same needs as we have out there today. So traditionally, a lot of the networking was site to site, right? There were servers at a corporate location and the users at remote sites access those over some sort of private network, usually MPLS. Now the majority of those services are being hosted in the cloud. So the focus is not necessarily creating that site-to-site connectivity or optimizing that connectivity. It's optimizing connectivity to the cloud resources. With those traditional networks, there were a few applications that needed to be prioritized. Maybe there was a PBX on site or a single server for POS or whatever it was, but you could create a simple policy and things didn't change. You assigned a certain amount of bandwidth to that application and you were done. Now because there's so many different cloud applications and the usage constantly changes and the number of users accessing those and so many variables, the cloud network, the SD-WAN solution needs to be very autonomous and automated to be able to keep track of that. The traditional networks used very much of an all-in-one approach. There was some sort of router, typically a Cisco router that sat at the site. It did some NAT, it did some basic firewall, it had some ACLs in it. You kind of set it once and forget it. That was pretty much the way those networks were rolled out. Now you need purpose-built solutions that address these cloud resources because those traditional solutions obviously just don't work anymore. So this is kind of setting the stage for SD-WAN to come in and address these needs. And we kind of see these fall into what we have really put into three buckets: firewalls, there's edge-based, there's edge-based SD-WAN solutions, and then some network-based SD-WAN solutions. And then I'll talk about these and kind of talk about obviously where we fall into this. But the traditional firewall approach was, I've got my firewall, it's got some SD-WAN capabilities, and they all have, I'd say most firewalls out there, all the big ones, all the names that I'm sure everyone knows, have some sort of SD-WAN add-on that you can either pay for or enable. And it's basically, again, it's focused on easing the connectivity of site to site. So if you need some VPN connectivity from site A to site B, you turn on the SD-WAN capabilities in that firewall, it builds the tunnel. Great. That is absolutely a good application for it. You define some simple policies. It's kind of set it once and just hope it works. And obviously it's an all-in-one solution. So where this falls short, though, is it does not give any capability to control traffic to any cloud resources, right? There is, I can set policies that define QoS outbound, right? So all my traffic that's flowing through the firewall out, I can control it to some degree, but I have no ability to control the traffic all the way to the cloud resource or any inbound traffic. So there's definitely some holes in this approach as far as cloud is as far as cloud is concerned. And it's a very static configuration. So there's, I think it has its place, but there's, when we talk cloud, there's definitely some room for improvement there. The next category is edge-based WAN. So these are solutions that are deployed with a unit that goes at the customer's location. There's no cloud network yet, so this is a cloud. This is an edge-based solution. Kind of, again, focus on site-to-site connectivity, very manual policies, static policies, usually trying to incorporate some kind of security into this. So if the customer has an existing firewall or wants to use a separate security solution, it becomes a little more difficult because this solution wants to take over security, which is not always optimal. But again, there's still no cloud network that's built into this solution, so there's no ability to control that cloud traffic. That kind of brought us into network-based SD-WAN. So these are solutions that incorporate both a on-premise router and some sort of network gateway. This is obviously a vast improvement now, because with this network gateway component, we can control some traffic inbound. But again, we're still defining very granular manual policies, which can be helpful to identify a certain traffic type and prioritize it, but it doesn't give you flexibility to automatically adjust those policies when needed. It's a static assignment. So that's kind of where these fall short. And again, not a lot of flexibility when you want to deploy your own security solution or work with an existing firewall. So that kind of brings us to where BigLeaf sits. We've taken this approach. We've sort of built this solution from the ground up, even back in 2014, as a cloud-focused SD-WAN solution. So we can optimize all the site-to-site connectivity, that all that VPN traffic is able to be optimized. Automatic policy creation, so no manual configuration of any QoS policies. It's completely automated. So as you deploy new cloud resources or the usage of your resources changes, we automatically adapt to that. It's a purpose-built appliance and purpose-built cloud gateway network, paired with those, all those cloud providers that we've been talking about. So it's a solution that's specifically designed to address cloud-first networking and really cloud-first SD-WAN. Maybe I'll pause there, Joe, and see if do we have any questions or anything that needs to be.
Hold on one second. Let's see. So you mentioned an appliance. So does it sit outside the firewall?
It does, yes. So I have a diagram coming up where we can look at this in a little more detail, but yes, the BigLeaf solution has a router that goes at your site. It's able to terminate all the ISP connections and sit out in front of your firewall. So that means that it's a very transparent installation because it's out on the WAN side of the firewall. So no need to redeploy any of your security policies. We don't touch the security settings at all. We're just sitting outside the firewall, really looking like a single ISP, no matter how many are plugged into us, single ISP look as far as the firewall is concerned. So yeah, we have the hardware that actually gets deployed is dependent on the service policy you sign up for. So that's all included. You don't have to worry about what the hardware is. It's shipped out and automatically configured, and you don't have to deal with any hardware concerns at all.
All right, so one other, maybe you're going to get to this one as well. What about redundancy? So I'm assuming that when you mentioned a router,
Yep.
maybe that's where that came from.
Yeah, that is a good question, because when all of the ISP circuits are aggregated into a single device, that device can become a single point of failure. So we offer several hardware redundancy options. Obviously the service plan comes with overnight hardware replacement, but we can offer a warm spare approach where there's a second router sitting on site. It's fully configured. If the primary fails, you can just move the cables over, back up and running. That's a manual process, obviously. And then we have our automated HA, which is high availability deployment. There are 2 BigLeaf routers, normally plugged, each one is plugged into each of the ISPs. Each router is plugged into each of the firewalls. So it's a fully, it becomes a fully redundant hardware approach where if there's a failure of any one piece of hardware, we still have, obviously full redundancy built in. So we can take that as far as the customer needs to take that. Were there any more? Do you want me to?
And we might get to this, but does the service plan include the rental of hardware?
Correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, service plan includes hardware, support, upgrades, software, really all in. Yeah. Yep, all in approach.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for now.
All right. So that kind of lays the groundwork for kind of where the SD-WAN market came from, where it's going, maybe some of the, maybe not all the players, but sort of the buckets I think that they fit into, and kind of where those approaches would work or are better. But obviously, as we talk about a cloud focus, right? So mission critical applications sitting in the cloud. The big chunk of that, and here's that same diagram again, is the way you're accessing those resources is over ISP circuits, which are unpredictable. So what BigLeaf is trying to do is come in and add some predictability, add some intelligence, maximize uptime for customers to be able to access those critical cloud applications that they're deploying. So what does the BigLeaf solution look like? Yeah, so as mentioned, there's a router that goes at the customer site. So this is part of the service plan. It's included, scaled to match the bandwidth that it is actually plugging into the BigLeaf. So whatever service plan you subscribe to, the router that shows up will be able to accommodate, obviously, the bandwidth that you are actually plugging into the BigLeaf. So we can accommodate up to 4 ISP circuits. You plug them right into the BigLeaf router. And then the BigLeaf router hands off a single connection into the firewall. So as far as the firewall is concerned, this just looks like a single ISP. The BigLeaf, as far as the firewall is concerned, is your ISP now. So all traffic gets sent over to the BigLeaf. There's no failover or any backup or any of those configurations have to be done on the firewall. All that happens on the BigLeaf side. So this is a very simple configuration as far as a firewall is concerned. Set your IP address, set your default gateway, and you're off. That's all that needs to be done. So this is an installation that's usually very, very quick, sub 15 minutes, we'll call it. And We don't care. We're agnostic as far as which ISP you choose, which firewall you use. So there's no, we are carrier agnostic, firewall agnostic, bandwidth agnostic. We don't care. We can work with anyone. So you bring your own bandwidth. It might be fiber, might be broadband, some sort of copper services, 4G, satellite, whatever ISP is most appropriate for the customer site. You just sign up for that service, plug it into the BigLeaf. And then the other side of the BigLeaf solution is our gateway clusters. So these are our cloud gateway clusters that sit in our network around the US and around the world, where the traffic from the site now is sent through the BigLeaf router back through the gateway cluster and then onto the internet. So by using this approach, we can control not only the outbound traffic, but also the inbound traffic. So that's kind of the important piece here, is that because we're controlling the traffic outbound through our network and inbound through our network, we can now prioritize and apply policies to the critical traffic to make sure it gets priority over the non-critical traffic. That gateway cluster sits in a data center where we have direct access onto the internet backbone. So if there's traffic that's destined anywhere on the internet, we can send that. But we, more importantly, have a direct peering relationship in that data center with thousands of, excuse me, really thousands of cloud providers. So this is a peering exchange that we're a part of, where you can think of us sitting on the same network as these cloud providers. So whether it's Amazon, whether it's Azure, whether it's hosted voice providers, whether it's thousands of providers, whether it's Teams or whether it's Office 365 or whatever the cloud traffic is, we can now prioritize that traffic, obviously because we have control in both directions, but we're literally sitting on the same network as that cloud provider. So that traffic doesn't have to go onto the internet at large, it can stay on the same network. So we have control right to the provider. Now, assuming that your provider that you're trying to connect to is not on that network, we still have control all the way from your location through our gateway cluster. And that's where the issues are occurring. The problem is not normally between our gateway cluster and a data center, maybe that your server's in. That's not the concern. We're able to control that traffic on the part of the network that's most susceptible to issues, which is that ISP's network, right? So we can do load balancing across those ISPs, meaning we can take the traffic and put it on the ISP that's most appropriate at that point in time. We can do automated failover. So if traffic needs to move from one ISP to another, we can do that automatically in the middle of a session and not drop that session. So let's say you're on a voice over IP call to an 8x8 server. If anything happens in the middle of that call and we need to move it from one ISP to another, that call stays up. Both callers never know anything happens, and that session stays up and works. So there's a seamless failover capability that's built into this, because we're not treating these ISPs any longer as your primary ISP and your backup. We're continuously monitoring these ISP connections and choosing the one that's most appropriate. So there might be a lower cost ISP that you have plugged in for redundancy, but there might be cases where it's performing better than your primary ISP. So we're not looking at them as primary and backup. We're looking at them as 2, 3, 4 ISPs that are usable, and we'll put the traffic on the one that's most appropriate.
Hey, John, 2 questions. Yes. Let's see.
Yes.
One from Mark. Do I need a static IP for the hardware?
That's a good question. So we do not require static IP addresses from the providers. We can work with a DHCP address or the dynamic handoff from a provider, because the way this works is BigLeaf is assigning a new IP address to the firewall. So if I use my little pointer here, there'll be a new IP subnet that's assigned here out of the back of the BigLeaf into the firewall. So we're going to assign a new public IP subnet. It can be as large as you need. And the previous IPs that we're using from your carrier are now going to be assigned on the BigLeaf WAN addresses, right on these WAN interfaces here. So those don't need to be static, but if the carrier assigns you a static, we'll program it on the BigLeaf and use it. But if there's a dynamic handoff, a DHCP handoff from a provider, typically on a broadband connection, you can just plug that right into the BigLeaf, no problem.
Okay. And then another question, which you might be getting to this later. Can this service be applied for employees, working from home now?
That is a great question.
With the gaming, with the gaming traffic, I imagine that's where this came from, right? Gaming traffic,
Yep.
all of the type of traffic on the network.
Yeah, I would say up until February of this year, the conversation was, employees sitting in this office right here, right? But then in March, we started getting calls saying, I love your service and I love what it does, but can this be deployed in a home office? And obviously the answer was yes. It just was not packaged or built for that, as far as pricing and the product and things. So we actually created a home office package that we can sell as well that does all the same functionality for a home office. And I have a few slides and then I'm going to touch on home office, actually, what the architecture looks like and kind of why it's advantageous in a home. So yeah, I'm going to hit on that, but if I don't, obviously if I don't answer all the questions, let me know.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So this is so I guess just to point this out, this is a typical architecture for a single BigLeaf location. This would be the same architecture if you have 10 sites, 100 sites, 1,000 sites. They would each have this similar architecture. So the nice thing is that BigLeaf can apply to a customer that has a single location, all the way to a customer with thousands of locations. So there's no architecture difference. All the benefits remain. So it's nice because we can scale. We can grow with the customer. We can scale to really to any size, and there's no, customer that's too small or too large, I guess is the point. So I guess just to recap some of the benefits, we talked about most of this, but the QoS controls, all the policy creation, monitoring of bandwidth and changing of bandwidth, changing of policies, that's all automated. It's dynamic. It's done on the fly. So right out of the box, there's no need to manually create any policies. Our software automatically identifies your traffic, puts it into a policy, and prioritizes it automatically. So no need to change. And what's nice too, so obviously that cuts down on the installation time, but it also means that as your application usage changes over time, maybe you're not using Office 365, but a month from now you are, or you're rolling out a new hosted voice with 8x8 or rolling out Starleaf, whatever it is. As those things happen, there's no need to go in and update the BigLeaf configuration. It's automatically done for you. Now we absolutely have a portal where you can go in and see this and make some changes and actually see all your traffic, but there's no need to go in there proactively and make any changes. All that happens. And that's part of the intelligent load balancing, right? We're monitoring those ISP circuits constantly. So we have real-time information on how the ISPs are performing. So we report on that, but we also take action as far as load balancing based on all that traffic. Firewall friendly, we talked about that. The ability to work with any firewall. That's huge because obviously you've made a huge investment in firewalls and spent time to create those policies, and whether it's virus protection or web filtering or whatever it might be, all that remains in place. We don't touch any of that. Same IP failover is huge. So that IP address that we assign the customer now gets programmed on that firewall. It never changes. So you could make any ISP change that you want to. You could sign up for a new ISP. You could drop the two you have, add a third, whatever it is. Has no bearing on the configuration of that firewall and the IP that's assigned to that site. So that's always going to stay with you and make it very easy to configure services, configure hardware, whether there's VPN tunnels. That configuration never changes. And obviously the direct peering with the thousands of cloud applications means that there's no configuration needed to access those provided. And the configuration of the policies to access those completely automated. appearing in the same data center as those providers, so no extra hops or any traffic or any extra policies or any extra cost that's needed to access those resources. So there's literally thousands of these. I mean, this is just a few that obviously our marketing team obviously built the slide. Some of the ones that come up obviously more often, but all the Microsoft resources, AWS, Google, Salesforce, Zoom, all the video conference providers, the hosted providers, really they're all in this. So the list is huge. So just a few, I think what we find is we are definitely trying to keep things simple, automate, big into automation, the dynamic policy creation in the QoS settings, 24/7 technical support, that actually live answer. So, anytime, day or night, you can get a hold of us. So I think our customers, the people that become customers stay as customers. We have a very high retention rate, and be more than happy to, obviously let you talk to any customer, with customers in all verticals, with all applications. So the ones that go with us obviously stay very happy. I was gonna hop on to the home office application, Joe. Any questions up until now?
Let's see. You mentioned that it supports failover on the same IP. What about if there was a wireless data hub as a failover option?
That's a good question. Yeah, so obviously we do support connectivity to 4G, 5G networks as well as satellite networks. If the data plan that you are subscribed to allows for unlimited usage, then obviously there's no configuration change. We just look at that as another ISP connection and we use it when it's most appropriate. In many cases, there is a data plan, or unlimited doesn't always mean unlimited. It could be throttled. So there could be times where you don't necessarily want to utilize those wireless circuits in a primary capacity, and then actually want them to be backup. We can absolutely do that. So we will only put traffic on those connections when either the other wired circuits are down or they're to the point where they're considered unusable by BigLeaf, because we're continuously monitoring. So there might be a case where the circuit is up, but there's so much packet loss or latency on the circuit that we need to go to the wireless in order to keep sessions alive. So we can set as primary, we can set it as the backup, and we kind of have some options in between as well where we can kind of really utilize them a little more often, but not always. So there's some options with wireless. I hope that answered the question. But
I think so.
Yeah.
It sounds like I would imagine that's part of the due diligence of your implementation team.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So there's an onboarding process where we're gathering information about who are your ISPs, what is the speed, what are the IP addresses, is there a data plan, those type of questions. We want to gather all that. So when we deploy configuration, that it obviously matches what you need. That is the other nice piece, is after we gather all that information and configure the router that gets shipped out, when it arrives, it's fully configured and ready to go. You don't even need to schedule a turn up with us. You can literally plug it in anytime. We're certainly available to hop on the call with you, but we don't need to be on the call with you because it's pre-configured, sitting outside the firewall. So it's really a plug and play installation.
Got it. Okay. And we have about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah. So just to kind of wrap up, I mean, I know we already talked about the home office, I guess, application. This is definitely something that's, if we were having this conversation a few months ago, it would be, yeah, you've got some work from home employees, but now, as we see, 74% of CFOs expect there to be some level of work from home post COVID-19. So they might not be full-time, they might be part-time at home. There'll be some level of work from home for most people I think in the next few months. they'll be spending obviously to address this, because I don't think the home office network is necessarily ready for this, especially if we're talking about employees in a customer-facing role, like maybe call center employees. I think companies are rethinking how they're going to address those needs as far as quality of service, especially to make sure that if they're on a voice or video connection with a customer, that session has prioritization over all the other things that are going on in the home. And I think we all know this. I think companies are looking at their real estate costs and trying to decide, where that break even is between having someone work from home versus in the office, and I think what all that's going to look like. So this survey recently said 25 to 30% of the workforce will be working at home at least one day a week within the next 2 years. So that's a significant number, and that company can realize an $11,000 cost savings for any employee that's even working from home half the time. So I think we're going to see this. I think this is a permanent change now, and we're trying to help companies address these needs, right? Because I think what happens is exactly what we see here. You've got various things going on in a home. There could be one or more people working from home using totally different applications. Some of those could be students. We obviously still don't know what's going to happen with school in the fall, so there could be students at home again doing Zoom sessions or using, maybe it's Google Meet, or they're on using Office 365 or G Suite, and then obviously the business applications that are all being used. And then you've got, maybe you've got your little ones at home doing Netflix or watching Disney Plus or YouTube or streaming. So there's a lot of different applications going on in the home, and we need a way to control those. So enter in the BigLeaf solution, similar diagram to what we saw earlier, but now we're looking at it from a home office point of view, where you've typically only have a single ISP connection, right? So we're plugging the BigLeaf in line with that single ISP connection to guarantee prioritization and accessibility of those mission critical applications over the non-essential traffic, because that's really the big goal here, is to make sure that anything else that's going on in the home is not affecting those business applications or school applications if it's Zoom. So we're doing this over a single ISP connection. So we're, the focus here now is to monitor that ISP circuit, to provide detailed metrics on what's going on with that ISP connection. So if IT needs to help that user troubleshoot, now we've got a lot of data to work with as to what's going on with that home office connection, when it started happening, what the problem is, where it's occurring, what happened in the ISP's network those issues are occurring on. So helping IT to resolve any home office issues much more quickly. Even if they're not providing that circuit, we still have a lot of troubleshooting data to help resolve that problem. Combined with the QoS controls for that critical traffic, can help guarantee that even if there's that ISP who might be giving 100 meg of throughput, there might be times of the day where maybe it's only 60 meg available. So we can recognize that traffic shape around that and do some things to make sure that, again, the mission critical apps stay prioritized over the non-critical applications in the home. So we've got this built to provide for that always available connectivity. Certainly the capability to provide backup circuits as well. So if, maybe 4G is a good backup option there. There's a month-to-month term on those as well. So if there's doubt as to the length that employee might be working from home, and obviously don't want to get into a long-term contract, we can do a month-to-month. The ability to recognize those business applications over the home applications, and then provide that same level of support. So, we can certainly talk about, if there's customers on the call here with more specific applications, be more than happy to dive into them. But that's kind of the overview right on time, hopefully.
Yeah, no, that was like perfect timing.